Dubai is a massive player on the global stage in terms of human development and of innovation.
Just over 50 years ago, oil was discovered here in Dubai. So how did Dubai get so rich?
Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum ruled Dubai for 32 years. Sheikh Rashid was credited with transforming Dubai into a world-class metropolis.
Our growth and the growth of our industry will generate the trade, tourism and business that will drive the future success of the great city in which we live.
Hi everybody! Dubai is one of the most incredible nations of the 21st century. In spite of just being 35 square kilometers in area, which is 19 times smaller than the city of Mumbai, this nation has evolved from being a barren desert to the 12th wealthiest city in the world. And while most people would think that Dubai got rich only because of oil, in reality, today, oil makes up barely 1% of its entire GDP. In fact, Dubai has lesser oil reserves than India and even Vietnam. And yet, while today many oil-rich nations are struggling to grow, this city has become such an important financial business hub that out of the 500 biggest companies in the world, an astonishing 140 companies have their headquarters in this tiny city of Dubai. And in the global politics, it is more or less the epicenter of the world trade itself. The question is, in just 40 years, how did this little city of Dubai go from a barren desert to becoming one of the wealthiest in the world? How did they manage to achieve this without banking on their oil reserves? And most importantly, what are the lessons that India needs to learn from the iconic rise of Dubai? This video is brought to you by cocofm, but more on this at the end of the video. To understand this, you first have to understand the basic structure of the Middle East, because most people really don't know what is the difference between UAE, Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So this is the Middle Eastern region wherein you have the United Arab Emirates or UAE. What is UAE? UAE is nothing but a federation of 7 emirates, which are Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Sharjah, Ajman, Al Quoin, Fujairah and Ras Al Khaimah. These emirates are almost like states that work autonomously within the federation. If this is very clear to you, let's move to 1960s Dubai.
In the presence of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan, the president.
Back in the 1960s, the UAE had not been formed and Dubai was just another fishing town that existed at the creek along the Middle Eastern trade routes. So let alone buildings, it was just another desert with nothing else but people riding on camels. This is when something crazy happened.
On the 4th of July 1962, an oil tanker called British Signal sailed from Das Island carrying Abu Dhabi's first ever cargo of oil. In 1958, the first offshore well was drilled in the Sheikh field of Abu Dhabi. And it was from this field that the first shipment of crude oil for the world market was exported on the British Signal in 1962.
In the 1960s, the Middle Eastern regions discovered tons of oil beneath them, and suddenly they realized that they were practically sitting on a gold mine. And as the oil prices started shooting up, billions of dollars started flooding into the city. Now most people would say, yeah bro, so what? I mean, if you give something as important as oil reserves to any country or any leader, that country will obviously become rich and powerful, right? Well, not really guys, because if you look at the oil reserves all across the world, you will see that UAE is only the 7th largest oil reserve in the world. And if you notice something peculiar in this table, the largest oil reserve is actually in Venezuela. And this is what is happening in Venezuela.
The economy is going into a spiral of dysfunctionality.
Venezuela has, of today, the highest inflation in the world.
Venezuelans today cannot eat. You see people eating from the garbage.
Cycle of violence and street protest.
So yeah, oil reserves does not mean that you'll be rich and powerful. In fact, even in UAE, if you look at oil reserves in the Emirates, you will see that while Abu Dhabi has 92.2 billion barrels of oil, Dubai has only 4 billion barrels. So it's not like they had infinite wealth. And you know what is the best part? When Dubai discovered oil, the ruler of Dubai was Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum. He said a very important statement that echoes through the tunnels of time even today. He said, and I quote, "I have good news and bad news. We have found oil, but not much." Now you see, For a ruler who has lived in a remote barren desert all his life, this statement was nothing short of extraordinary because he clearly realized that they have to do something before oil runs out. And not so surprisingly, that is exactly what he did. While on one side they started making a lot of money selling oil, on the other side, he started identifying the most important strengths of Dubai that could be leveraged to build a diversified economy. And the first thing he spotted is the strategic location of Dubai, and more importantly, this place that is 35 kilometers southwest of Dubai. This was a very important location for world trade. Why? Because it was in close proximity to Iran and the entrance to the Persian Gulf. So obviously very important for the Middle East trade. And secondly, it was a very strategic connecting point to Arabian Gulf, the Indian subcontinent, the Commonwealth nations like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Ukraine and Uzbekistan, and then immediately down south, it was in close proximity to Africa. So practically, Dubai was so strategically located that it could give unparalleled access to some of the most important regions in the world, both through sea and air. And it provided access to a market of 1 billion people during that time. This is the reason why Sheikh took up a Super Bull project with something called the Jebel Ali port that started operating since the late 1970s. And he took up very heavy loans to first dig deep into the shallow waters and carried out dredging. As in what? Sand is taken out from the Dubai Creek to create a deep water port. This port was then used both for shipping Dubai's oil and more importantly to build cutting-edge shipping facilities so that Dubai could offer world-class shipping services to the most valuable ships in the world. And today, the Jebel Ali port provides many important logistical services in many areas of general maritime freights. Along with that, the port also provides cooling services with advanced storage and cooling facilities which cover an area of 10,000 square meters. And these facilities help to store all the shipments that contain perishable products and products that need special storage conditions. These products include pharmaceutical products, chocolate and cosmetics. And today, the Jebel Ali port is the 9th busiest port in the world and handles roughly 10% of the entire world's container traffic with over 14 million containers handled every single year. As a result, while oil contributes to just 1% of Dubai's GDP, as of 2018, the maritime industry alone contributed 7% of Dubai's GDP. And along with the maritime industry, the Sheikh went ahead to build a second important asset for the economy of Dubai, which was something called the Freezone.
Crown Prince and the Prime Minister signed the agreement for work to start in 1976. And the desert heard the great project. The main road to the
Dubai Freezone, in simple words, were specially allocated areas wherein companies from all across the world could set up their business with special privileges. These special privileges included 4 mind-boggling incentives that were not being offered anywhere in the world, which were number 1, 100% foreign ownership, as in you don't have to collaborate with a local company to set up your business. Number 2, 100% repatriation of capital and profits, as in you can send 100% of your profits to your home country. Number 3, 100% import and export tax exemption, and lastly, 100% exemption from local and corporate taxes both. Basically, they said, just set up your business here and keep all your profits with yourself. Now the question over here is, then how does Dubai make money in spite of giving so many privileges? Well, as it turns out, Dubai does not make a lot of money from the free zones. So the question is, then what is Dubai getting out of all of this? Well, the Sheikh of Dubai is giving out these benefits for 3 important reasons: de-risking, diversification, and to create an irreplaceable, irreversible global business ecosystem so that Dubai can make money not today, not tomorrow, but 10 years, 20 years down the line. To understand this, you need to understand the fact that every business actually needs a conducive ecosystem along with important supporting entities to actually function as a business. And without these entities, a company or a business alone cannot function at all. A simple example of the same is Ola. You see guys, for Ola to function as a service, you first need internet providers like Jio and Airtel who can provide 4G access at dirt cheap price. That is when you'll be able to book a cab from the road itself. Then you need Android and iPhone manufacturers who can make phones with the processing ability to run these apps and at the same time make it affordable enough for the drivers and passengers to use them. After that, you need automobile manufacturers and banks who could make it affordable for the drivers to buy these cars. And lastly, you need Google Maps API that could be used for tracking and navigation. And all of these entities put together make an ecosystem for Ola and Uber to actually operate. And once they establish this ecosystem, they never ever leave the market until they die. And even if they do, someone else will come and take their place because the real asset over here is not Ola the entity, but the ecosystem of cabs that Ola and Uber have managed to build their business on. In fact, let alone operating in the ecosystem, Jio, Zomato, Airtel and Ola have spent billions of dollars to create an ecosystem in India for which they are suffering thousands of crores of losses, except of course Jio. Similarly, in Dubai, because of regulation and taxation being so lenient, some of the most incredible tech companies have set up their bases. And like I said before, in the little city of Dubai, which is almost 1/18 the size of Mumbai, it has more than 100,000 organizations including fintech, food tech and medtech companies from all across the world. That is an incredible number for a city that is so freaking small. This is the reason why Dubai has become one of the best business ecosystems in the world with world-class talent, world-class companies and more importantly, cutting-edge startups that are making an irreversible, irreplaceable business ecosystem. So after 10 years, even if Dubai imposes a 5 to 10% tax, these companies will be more than happy to pay that tax and will never ever leave Dubai. As a result, after oil, Dubai can bank on the taxes from these insanely prosperous businesses in the city. Therefore, the Emirate of Dubai is laying a solid foundation to de-risk itself from oil and diversify into business ecosystem. And this brings me to the most important and perhaps the most well-known aspect of Dubai, which is tourism. Long story short, Dubai is by far one of the most strategic locations in the world for air transportation. If you look at Dubai in the world map, you will see that Dubai is barely a 4-hour flight away for a population of 2 billion people and an 8-hour flight away from 5 billion people, which is literally 2/3 of the world's population. And these flights come from some of the most important destinations in the world, including Europe, Singapore, India, China and even Africa. On the other hand, for destinations that are not close by, like Canada, US and Australia, Dubai acts as the perfect layover spot for the planes going from these places and to these places. But the biggest hurdle for Dubai back then was the image of Dubai. Now obviously, if I show you a barren sandy land which swings between 20 degrees to 50 degrees, that doesn't look like a lucrative tourist destination, right? So guess what? They just took all the money that they made from oil and they just changed that. Now for a city that is 42 times smaller than Delhi, Dubai has done such an insane job with its tourism industry that while the entire country of India had 17.91 million tourist arrivals in 2019, Dubai, which is 1 lakh times smaller than India, had 16.73 million tourist arrivals. And they built many avenues of spending like hotels, amusement parks, aqua venture parks, underwater zoos and even ski slopes. Yes, they built a ski slope with 6,000 tons of snow inside a freaking desert. As a result, in total, the international overnight visitor spend in Dubai in 2018 was $30.82 billion, which is way ahead of Mecca, Bangkok, Singapore and even London. As a result, the tourism industry of Dubai as of 2019 contributed 11.5% to the GDP of Dubai. This is how Dubai diversified its economy from oil into tourism, business ecosystem and maritime trade. And today, it is using its business ecosystem and maritime trade to create an irreversible, irreplaceable scenario for the biggest companies and the most powerful trading countries in the world. And this brings me to the most important part of the episode, and that are the lessons that we need to learn from the incredible rise of Dubai. Before we move on, I want to thank our partners cocofm for supporting our content. People, if you're someone who wants to be a great leader like the Sheikhs of Dubai, then I would highly recommend you to listen to this audiobook called Start With Why by Simon Sinek on cocofm. cocofm is India's leading vernacular audio learning platform with over 1000 plus hours of content library with 4.5 plus rating and a huge library of non-fiction content. In fact, you must even check out this audio series on Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw in Hindi. If these kind of subjects intrigue you, then do use the code THINK20 for a 20% discount on their subscription. And the first 1,000 people can get a 50% discount if they use THINK50 through the special link in the description. If this sounds useful to you, download the cocofm app from the link in the description. Moving on to the lessons, the first thing we need to learn is that no matter how much resources you have at your disposal, unless you use it properly, it will never ever create wealth for you. In case of oil, like we saw, on one side we have Venezuela, which collapsed in spite of having the largest oil reserve in the world. Dubai used it very judiciously to achieve sustainable growth instead of recklessly depleting it. Now in case of India, I don't know if you've seen this, but then I've seen these uncles since the past 5 to 10 years who often say that, India has so much population, that is why we are underdeveloped. China also has population, but they used it to their advantage. So this advantage or disadvantage is completely upon you. In fact, Japan right now is on the verge of crisis due to lack of population. And this brings me to lesson number 2. Diversification of resources is extremely critical for the growth of any country, and a single asset cannot help you with sustainable growth. And lastly, can you imagine if Dubai, being such a small city, can become a tourism hub with man-made marvels? India is filthy rich in terms of natural beauty and destinations that are far beyond man-made structures. So if we calculatively use these resources to create a tourism industry in India, we could be the biggest tourism hub in the world. Think about it. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button in order to make YouTube Baba happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.